Ride, 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 yeah. Wheels keep turning. Ride, ride, ride. Good morning. Welcome back to the second hour of LoveBabz, LoveTalk. I'm Babz Rawls-Ivy. I got Jameson Davis here today. Hey, good morning.
Good morning, Babs. Good morning. Good morning. How are you doing? Can you hear me
I'm
okay?
good. How are you? Welcome home. I know you were on vacation a little bit.
Yes, had to take a little R&R, much needed. Went by way too fast, as it always does. Looks like you're having trouble hearing me. So let me put my headphones on and see if that helps out.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'm excited to talk to you because there's a lot going on in this immigration game right now.
Woo. That is true. That is a very accurate statement. A lot to talk about. That definitely appreciate you inviting me and let me use this platform to get the word out for our upcoming event, but also just to have this much needed conversation. This is a truly like critical moment um, for Black folks as a whole, but also our involvement in immigration and protecting our communities and our makeup of our communities, because the folks that make up our community are the ones that are being targeted, right? And
Yes.
so we have really the most to lose in our communities because our communities are the most diverse. And so it's time for us to step up in ways that we have in the past, to once again be at the forefront of a important conversation such as immigration.
So tell me about this gathering of folks that y'all are hosting that are coming together to talk about this very nature of what is at stake for our communities, which are diverse and vulnerable.
Yeah, so a group of us got together, really just having personal conversations, right? Started there about what we were seeing, the what was coming out of federal government, like what was happening. The fact that, for example, the big beautiful bill, so quote unquote, I hate to even call it that, has $170 billion, earmarked specific for immigration. And so, with that kind of money, it's pretty obviously that that's going to affect more than just one type of community. Oftentimes, when people think of immigration, rightfully so, they think of Spanish speaking immigrants, Latinos. But with that kind of funds and with the tactics that they've been using, we know for sure that's also going to have an impact on the Black community. And also, want to acknowledge as well that there are Black folks who are also fall in the Hispanic and Latino community as well. So there's an overlap there. And it's really important to acknowledge that, right? So, Jamaican American Connection, led by Kay Holness, Connected Students for a Dream, led by Tabitha Sugdeo. We got together and realized that it was some time for us to, have this conversation and center, the Black community in terms of educating them and getting the important information delivered to their doorstep, right? Our Latinos brothers and sisters do an amazing job of coalition building amongst themselves. And so that's something that we need to do on our end as well, which is making sure that the right information is getting to the right folks and getting to them before it's too late, right? We want to be as proactive and as preventative as possible, right? And so it's time for us to do that. And then this event is doing just that. It's an event that's really centered and designed around Black immigrants, those, whether you're coming from West Indies or whether you're coming from parts of Africa. It's groups that have oftentimes been like invisibilized, in the immigrant conversation, but have been disproportionately targeted by enforcement, right? Some of the things that we're seeing and some of the overlapping of what we're seeing is a lot of the tactics that were used in mass incarceration are now being used in immigration.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And
So
speak
just
to
for
that a little
example,
bit.
yeah,
Speak to those
no,
tactics.
absolutely. Tactics that we know all too well, starting with racial profiling, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the one that folks know most, where obviously, you're doing it based off of what somebody looks like, right? And what that ends up leading
And they're
to is
very clear about
disproportionate,
saying that too, Jameson. Like
very clear.
they're not like, oh, you're mistaken. They're like,
Yeah,
we're targeting people who we think look like something
yeah,
other than
yeah,
us.
yeah. No, racial profiling, it is happening. It's a real thing. Rolling Stone came out with an article, and in the article it mentioned, while only 7% of the immigration population is black and considered to be black immigrants make up 20% of those facing deportation, right? For criminal convictions, including nonviolent offenses. So that's almost mirror of what you're seeing on the mass incarceration side, right? I mean, black folks make up around 10 to 20% of, or 10 to 15% of the American population, but we're as high as 40, 50+% of the individuals that are filling up these prisons and jails and all the ways they try to lock us up and keep us in cages. And so it's no different on the immigration side. I mean, you even seen some of the tactics change, right? In the beginning, the terminology and the messaging and communication was, oh, we're gonna only go after violent criminals, things of that nature. That had shifted to folks that have proper status, right? Some of the other tactics that changed as well is, ICE historically has done a lot of their work, entering homes or going toward to people's homes. They realized early on that people were trained really well with the Know Your Rights trainings. People had red cars, people, had attorneys on call. So they switched their tactics, right? They started catching folks when they're vulnerable. They started catching them, when they're going to mandatory check-ins, at federal buildings. They start catching them as they're dropping off kids on their way to school. They're trying to really catch people as vulnerable as possible. And it's pretty alarming, to be quite frank, right? Um, they were successful with the mass incarceration, so they took those tactics and they're using them for mass immigration deportation. And what we don't want to happen is that to also end up being another success, right? Because as I mentioned earlier, our communities, Black communities, communities of color, are the ones that are the most diverse, and so our communities are not going to look the same, even economically, right? You think of how much our immigrant brothers and sisters bring economically to our community, whether it's through business ownership, whether it's through opportunities, um, service opportunities, or other hardworking blue collar sectors. We're gonna miss that, right? We're gonna miss those economic opportunities, even tax benefits in terms of the tactics that are being used on the federal level. Is it's not just ICE, and that's another like scary thing, right? Is that it's not just ICE that's doing the enforcement. There's verified stories of FBI, ATF, and other federal entities participating in this enforcement, right? And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the great work that has been done at the ground level with organizations like Connecticut Students for a Dream that have really campaigned and pushed for a tougher bill in the Trust Act, right? Which really limits the communication between ICE and the federal government and local entities in terms of their cooperation with federal enforcement. Because the 10th Amendment said that the federal, when it comes to federal enforcement, that's the Fed's job, right? States shouldn't be helping out with federal enforcement when it comes to that. So, they're doing all they can to bring in other federal entities and organizations to help with this mass deportation that they're so obsessed with.
What rights do people really have, Jameson? What can we tell our immigrant sisters and brothers on how to sort of stay safe, and what happens to them if they get pulled up, pulled
Yeah,
over, stopped,
yeah,
kidnapped, whatever it is? What
yeah,
do we say? How do they work through this system? How do they get help? How do they access resources?
yeah. No, that's a great question, and a lot of that questions will be answered more in detail on Sunday, July 20th, from 5 to 7. So make sure you can either show up in person, or you can tune in virtually. So we try to make a creative space that's safe for everybody, but feel free and make sure you tune in there. But the short answer to that, and I'll give a short answer just because I do want to save that for the practicing attorneys that will be in attendance on Sunday. But there's almost levels, right? There's rights you have, preventative rights. So we want people to know that in terms of, if you do get a knock on the door or you do get approached, what rights you have, right? Are you required to speak? Do you have the red card? Can you hand that over? What does that actually do when you have the red card? And the red card is like a little, almost credit card size card that informs whoever you're handing it to that you're not giving up your rights, right? And then there's okay, if you are detained, what are your rights then? We'll go into more detail around that and explain to folks what they can do. There are also preventative things that they can do in terms of having proper paperwork filled out. One of the things that I know some organizations are doing are trying to find ways to keep people in the state, or at least in the Northeast, because what's happening and what has been seen is that when people get detained, they're oftentimes are moved as quick as possible to southern states or to states that are outside of the Northeast. And so one of the things that organizations are really trying to do is find ways, creative ways, and working collaboratively across state lines and keeping folks in the Northeast. So at the very minimum, they can be close to their family, but also potentially also be in a hopefully a more friendlier court district, right? And then there's like on the back end, right? If somebody is unfortunately deported, like, what are their rights? What are some of the steps that potentially they can take to come back into the country? If that is even an option? And then there's other conversations that we'll have that I don't want to pretty much put on air too much around protections, but also around preparedness. And those are conversations that we'll have on Sunday. And again, I'm just trying to be as 30,000 feet high as possible, just because I don't want to give too much away on such an open air. But we will be having those conversations and answering those questions on Sunday. And so extremely important for folks, even if you don't believe it applies to you, or if you know for a fact it doesn't apply to you, but it may apply to your neighbor who may not feel comfortable coming to an event or showing up virtually either. This is where we step up as Black folks. This is where we step up as folks who have status, right? Is that we need to be more knowledgeable ourselves so that way we can give accurate information to our neighbors, right? To the individuals that we know need it, but might not feel comfortable being at the forefront and learning about it. So this is a true opportunity for us to really protect our community, save our community, and just become even tighter amongst ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about the folks who are the practices attorneys and all the other advocates who are going to be in the space.
Yeah. So first, let me apologize for any misenunciations or pronunciations that I say. But we have an amazing power couple of attorneys that do immigration work. Miss Shernette Noyes Garon, excuse me, and her husband Juan Garon Sanchez. They have experience dealing with, I believe, T and U visas as well as other immigration. So they'll have, a lot of information to give folks in terms of, as we said, preventative work, as well as, opportunities to potentially maybe even find ways for them to be safe harbored or, get the information that they need to either remain in the States or potentially, find safe harbor elsewhere. Bishop John Selders, as many folks know, is an advocate for a laundry list of things, a true community leader, somebody who I think could really rally, the Black community that has status to be more involved in the educational piece of this fight in terms of educating themselves, but also getting that education out to the community, right? Then we have Alexis Smith, who's the executive director of New Haven Legal Assistance, who also will be offering her expertise as an attorney. And then we're moderated by Tabitha Sudeo, who is, the immigration leader in the state of Connecticut, who's done so many things with the Trust Act campaign, all the work that Connecticut Students for a Dream do for youth, and educating them, but also empowering them to have their voice in this important conversation. So, we have a great list and a lineup for folks. And the goal here really was just give folks accurate information, right? We want everybody from undocumented folks to mixed status families to know that you have rights, and you don't have to go through this alone, right? And so kind of what people can expect is legal experts to really walk them through what to do if ICE comes to the doorsteps or stops them in public. Then we'll talk about how to protect family, digital privacy. That's a huge piece that is not being discussed enough, at least in my opinion, is the digital privacy that folks are losing, and the
And what does
information.
that mean? What that means?
Yeah, so like, whenever you click on something and you like accept, and without like reading, which is what we all do because we want to use the app or we want to use, whatever it is that we're trying to make our life a little bit easier. Oftentimes, that data that's being shared amongst apps sometimes is finding its way to be used against folks, right? And then if there's something that's in the federal database, what I've heard and what's been happening is that information is being shared with ICE. So, for example, IRS information. Immigrants pay taxes, right? There's a way for immigrants to pay taxes, and unfortunately, that information is being shared to help with the mass deportation. And so, people got to really understand and be careful around, the impact that their digital privacy has, and what are some of the ways that they could protect themselves in terms of that information. We also want to talk about like the resilience piece, right? About like not just surviving this moment, but like organizing to not only fight back but to find ways to thrive as a community, to find ways to still be unapologetically ourselves, and to not let this, change the culture of our communities by removing individuals that are just so important and dear to what it is that we built over these years.
Hmm. So, I pay attention to people spotting ICE in town, like in
Yeah.
here in Connecticut, in New Haven,
Yep. Yep.
and it's quite troublesome to me, Jameson, that they're hanging out at courts. They are coming around restaurants that have, you know, put,
Yes.
Latino workers or
Yep.
other
Absolutely.
kinds of workers,
Absolutely.
and coming around schools.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. It's picked up. It's picked up in Connecticut. There's an article that came out recently that talked just about that. I believe it was CT Public. And in that article, they talked about ICE officers arrested about 247 people in Connecticut between January 20th of 2025, when Trump was sworn into office for the second term, in mid-June. So that's up from 112 during the same equivalent period in 2024. So that's a 125% increase right there, right? And like the elephant in the room, let's just discuss that, which is when you look at the numbers in terms of who's being picked up, you've seen a lot of black and brown folks,
We're not
right?
seeing Eastern Europeans.
That's what I'm saying, right? You're not seeing many of that, if any at all. I've read a number of articles, and all these articles list, Ecuadorians, Guatemalans, Mexicans, Peruvians, Brazilians, you know, folks from Dominican Republic, Colombians, Jamaicans, Nicaraguans. I'm not seeing anything with a certain hue, right, on the list, right? And so that's just the elephant in the room in the conversation, which is the fact that these, as we mentioned earlier, these tactics mirror so much of mass incarceration. It's almost disgusting. And it's not almost disgusting; it is disgusting, right? And so that's why it's just, as we talked about, it's really important for us to be in this fight and for us to be as preventative as possible. One of the things that I was reading was talking about where is it? Let me see if I can find it. Oh, yeah. So Black immigrants are twice as likely to be detained or deported due to criminal justice contact, right? Criminal justice system contact, even for minor offenses. And we know when it comes to the criminal justice system, Black folks are in contact with police at a much higher rate than any other race or ethnicity, right? When you're talking about African Americans. And so, again, the overlap, they're using these interactions that Black folks are having to, have a impact on the mass deportation as well. I mean, they're not hiding it, Babz. They're not hiding it. They're not making it difficult to figure out as well either. They're very upfront and open about what they're doing. And so, it's our job as a community, especially as an organization like the African American Society. We pride ourselves on being, a link to the African diaspora, right? And to have so much of Pan Africanism built within our foundation. Is that it's important for us to bring the diaspora together to have this conversation. So we as a diaspora can fight, right? And it's not just a specific group, but all of us together are protecting each other, hold each other accountable, and just being there for one another in the time of need.
And so I would imagine some of the stuff that you're going to talk about is how do we as a community protect and support our immigrant sisters and brothers, our
Absolutely.
cousins and what have you. How do we do that as a neighborhood and a community?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We want Connecticut to be like a very welcoming and accepting state where people can, walk around with their dignity and not be punished for, where they were born or where their parents were born. Right. Um, so it's absolutely, it's very important to the conversation for that to happen. We're gonna, it says 5 to 7, but the benefits of like owning the space and things of that nature is we will be there as long as we need, Babs. And, if it's 5 to 8 or 5 to 10, whatever the case may be, there's not many of these happening. I honestly don't know if there has been another one in terms of like a know your rights training where it's centered, Black immigrants, specifically, Black speaking English immigrants, where everybody's welcome. We have a number of translations. We have translations in Arabic. We have translations in Congolese. We have translations in Spanish. So everybody's more than welcome. If you can register and let us know what kind of translation you need, we can try to make sure that we'll have that there. But I do know for a fact that we have at least 4 to 5 different confirmed translations already set. So it's very important to let folks know, like, get there, ask the questions you always want to ask. There are no questions that are too novice. We're just trying to educate folks. We were just trying to create a space where folks don't have to look over their shoulder when they're getting the information that they need to then go back to whoever that they know needs that information. So take full advantage of this. We also hope that this is something that can be built on over time. We hope that this is something that is almost like an introductory, right? And then we can get a little bit more in the weeds as we move farther along to give folks even more poignant and specific information.
Well, I mean, are you concerned that ICE now has you on their radar? If you do this,
Am I concerned? No, I'm not. I'm not concerned because, and this is where I think Black folks who have status could really make a difference. Which is this is a resource I have to offer, and so I have a space that the community can come to and educate themselves. Folks can be safe, and so I'm going to offer my resource 100% of the time. This is my way of involving myself into a fight. One of the many ways I'm involving myself in the fight. But I have no concerns whatsoever. We will, do our best to take the necessary steps to protect the organization, as well. So whatever that looks like, we're prepared on that end. But this is a chance for us to not let our heads be dug into the sand, right? We don't want to sit here and pretend like this isn't our fight, because it is. And if we wait until the point where we think it is our fight, well, we're too late at that point, right? And so, no. The short answer for me is simple. It's no. There's no concern on my end whatsoever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do people register?
Yes.
I've been posting it, but
yeah.
I wasn't quite sure because I was like, is this a secret handshake I'm not getting?
You are always welcome to go. I know C4D on their Instagram has a link tree. You can visit the link tree on the Instagram. I just throw it in the chat as well.
Thank you.
So if you can share that on the Facebook or whatever the other platforms that your show is on, that would be greatly appreciated. But I also know, we Black folks, right? And we are who we are. So if you need to just pull up as well. You're more than welcome to do that. The registration is really important for us just because we want to try to make sure we have enough food for everybody. We want to make sure we have enough material for everybody. But if you feel like you're coming home from work and you just want to stop in and get some information and you didn't think you would have time, but you realize you did, do not hesitate for a second. Come on by. You are welcome with open arms. Um, so yeah, so register, don't register, come. Just come, be in the space, learn the information. And the most important thing is that when you learn the information, take that information and share it with other folks.
What I find most troubling about all of this is the way in which they are taking people out of this state or any state and putting them in places far from where their families and communities are, and
Yes.
and that's deliberate. I
Yes.
believe.
Yes. 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 It's tactic. Listen, you're gonna get me in trouble, Babs. But it's even some of these old slave tactics, in slave tactics. Like you move folks away from their family, from their kids, you know, and you break them down emotionally and mentally, and you hope they don't fight, right? But what they don't realize is that there's a coalition being built on the back end, right? And so when people do come up missing, there's a family member that reaches out, and there's a group of individuals that get started in the fight to find out the information needed for that individual to do what they can to get them back into the community, back to the family. But it's all about division. I mean, you know that, we know that. The best way to divide a community is to try to divide them, right? Remove them from their roots, remove them from their comfort zone, and place them put them in the place where they're uncomfortable and feel vulnerable. And those tactics are the very militaristic, and they're being used on American citizens and folks who have status. A lot of folks that are being picked up now have status. They have permanent status in the state, or sorry, in the country, but it's being ignored, right? And it's also the courts are also being ignored, right? Injunctions and things that have been passed down are just not being followed. So this is the time now. Like we as a community have to really step up and be vocal about where we stand on the issues. Because if we wait any longer, if you're not, at the table, you're on the menu.
Mm. So, thinking about this, the fact that that this administration is bold-faced ignoring law.
Yes.
Where can this end? Like, where does this? At some
That's
point, we got to get to a tipping point with this.
Well, that's also a loaded question, right? Which is, as a new law student, this is a conversation you'll love to have, and you'll have it plenty of times coming up, especially when you get to constitutional law, right? But this is where racism has really gained its hold on the country, right? Which is, in order for racism to be backed and to be quote unquote legit, there needs to be an institution that's backing it. And for me, for a long time, that was always the courts, right? The law and morals rarely intersect. Rarely. Laws and morals rarely intersect. If they ever do intersect, right? And so for a long time, one of my first published things, actually, when I was in law school, one of my articles in law school, I wrote, which was about how the judicial courts, were the backdrop around making racism legit, right? Because you had things like, black codes that were law, like these were laws, right? That were upheld by judges and upheld by, attorneys and, law enforcement. There has to be some legit backing to make it official. And so the courts have been that. And I don't think the courts are doing anything that they have historically done in the past, right? So that's another thing about knowing the historic side of the legal system and knowing the historic side of things, is that when you know the history of it all, it doesn't look much different than it has before. But in terms of the administration not listening to the courts, that's something where I don't know where it ends. I don't know where it ends. Who's going to enforce the federal government to enforce themselves?
Hmm.
You know,
Mm.
that's
But
the
for me,
million dollar
that feels
question.
like the elephant in the room. For me, it
Yeah,
feels like,
yeah,
because I mean, at some point, I mean,
yeah.
how many people can you keep stealing and kidnapping?
You know,
And now you're sending them out of the country to
yeah.
places where they're not from
I've never been. Did you hear the story about the
and
gentleman?
never been.
Yeah, did you hear a story about the Jamaican gentleman who his father was just serving he was serving in the army, I believe, or one of the military levels, and he was serving in Germany, so he had the baby in Germany, the man in Germany. Father was from Jamaica, but again, served. They're deporting him back to Jamaica. The son then had never been to Jamaica. You know, he was born in Germany because that's where his father was stationed. You know, only known America in terms of being raised, but for whatever reason they're deporting him, back to Jamaica, somewhere he's never been, right? Um, and there's numerous of stories of like that. You I read an article the other day about a woman who was a Jamaican woman who was deported. Um, her husband's American and just had a baby. I believe it was like a newborn, 2 weeks old, and she was deported. Um, it's it's new territory. It's new territory, and it's territory that is too close to home for us as Black folks. So we need to be educated on what the rules of the games are and where the boundaries are, so that way we can be as forceful as possible with our assistance, to our immigrant brothers and sisters.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's
So
it's
you're
it's now,
gathering
Babs.
people on
It's right now.
Sunday, 5 o'clock, 5 to 7, or 5 to whenever.
Yes, yes,
Um,
yes.
and you've got some
Gather
heavy
folks on Sunday.
hitters.
We'll have food there.
You have food, you have good information, you've got a highly qualified panel of folks who can speak to these issues up to the moment. Um,
Absolutely.
and who all is welcome. Not just people who are intimately connected to immigration, but people
Yeah.
who care deeply about their community.
Yes, because I could have said it better, and I'm not even going to add to that. I'm just going to leave it there. That's exactly who is invited. Folks who care about their community. Just
Mm.
come on by, learn, educate yourself, bring a friend with you. Um, we need you there. We need
So this is not
we
going to be the last time you do it, since this is the first time you're doing it. So I would imagine, as long as this fight is going on, you will continue to convene people on a some sort of regular way to keep
absolutely.
people informed.
Absolutely. This with this again, as I stated a little bit earlier, the goal was for this to almost be somewhat of a series, to this to be like a beginning introduction to folks, and then as things develop and happen, because there hasn't been a day where you can wake up and not get a new alert about some immigration change or some financial change that impacts immigration or impacts the community. And so we're going to be 100% doing our best to make sure that Black folks and folks of color who need this information are finding this information easily. And that's the thing, is that we don't want to make it difficult for folks to find this information, right? We want to make it easily accessible. And again, that's something that something that we're taking out of the playbook of our, Hispanic brothers and sisters who are doing a very successful job of getting the information and coalition building, to folks who need it.
Hmm. Thank you so much, Jameson, for coming on and talking about this very important
No,
gathering of folks. This is a good use of time and social media.
no, thank you. I do want to take a quick second and just give you your flowers again, like I always do. Just because, you're somebody who has created this platform. You created this platform, right? You developed it, you created it, and you can do anything you want to do with it. But you have chosen to be a beacon for the community. You have chosen to be, a lot of folks I talk to, they get their information from you, Babs, right? They're like, where do you get your information? Oh, I watch Babs show. Like, that's where I get my information. And so I just want to let you know that I'm beyond appreciative for all that you do for the community and all that you allow your platform to be. Um, and any way I can return the favor or be of service, you let me know. But just thank you for everything. I got this little flower here. This is for you.
No, thank you. You've been such a good support, and I love what you're doing over there at the African American Society 024.
Thank you,
And
guys.
I'm just over the moon, delighted by what you're trying to do over there and what you are doing over there. And the grounds look really nice.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot. Thank you. We're working on it. We're
They
working
look
on it.
they look really nice. I was
We're
like,
working
oh,
on it.
good.
Thank you. Come
All
on
right.
by
Well,
anytime.
thank you so much. We'll see you Sunday. Folks, there's the link and but you can see them all on social media. You could go to any of their sites and click on and get the information that you need so you can register and show up on Sunday. Thanks,
Thank you.
Jameson. Good to see
Thank you.
you.
Pleasure's always mine. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Harry. Y'all have a good weekend. I'll be back here on Monday. So get out there and enjoy the weekend. There's a lot going on. And show up on Sunday if you care about your community. Thanks, Harry.
We'll keep trying.